Hello. So today I wanted to answer the question, does everyone with autoimmunity need to avoid gluten and dairy? And this is a question that someone asked over on Instagram. So what I do is I will gather questions from people over on Instagram and answer them here in live mini trainings. So if you have any questions or topics that you want covered, you can head to my Instagram, which is livewell_Christina, and you can send me a direct message or you can ask questions there, and I'm happy to answer them in this format. So the question that was asked by someone on Instagram was, does everyone with autoimmunity need to avoid gluten and dairy? And firstly, I just want to start by saying that everyone with autoimmunity, even if we have the same diagnosis, is going to be very, very different. And the reasons for immune system dysfunction are going to be very different as well. And I can't emphasize that enough. So everyone is really, really so unique, even if they have an identical diagnosis, right? For understanding why the immune system is activating. But that being said, there are some common foods and things that might be adding to the inflammatory response. So autoimmunity is an activation of the immune system. And we want to look at it in all ways the immune system might be being activated. And food, and furthermore, how we break down and absorb that food in our bodies, is one of these pieces to consider. So the top 3 inflammatory foods I typically look to start are gluten, dairy, and refined sugar. So with gluten, even if you don't have celiac disease, it can be a good idea to avoid gluten if you have an autoimmune disease or are working to support your gut for a number of reasons. It's becoming more and more clear that celiac disease is only one manifestation of gluten intolerance, and that something called non-celiac gluten sensitivity, meaning that people react to gluten but don't have celiac disease, is a legitimate health concern. And symptoms can range from GI discomfort to fatigue and even neurological issues. So I know sometimes we think like, oh, being gluten-free is like a trend, and is it real? But there's a lot of evidence and anecdotal evidence too, and you might feel this as well, that you don't feel as good or you have increased symptoms when you have gluten. And there's legitimate reasons for that too, even if you don't have a celiac diagnosis. So this is because a component of gluten found in grains known as gliadin has been shown to cause leaky gut and inflammation for those with gut issues or autoimmune disease. And we know that 70% of our immune system lies in the area surrounding our gut. So whenever there are immune issues or immune dysfunction, we must look to the gut first and foremost. And I know if you've been following me or watched any of my videos, you know that I believe wholeheartedly in that. I'm all about gut health. Gluten can play a role in this, in gut health, in the development or exacerbation of what's called leaky gut. So even if you don't have celiac, and sometimes even if you don't have overt digestive issues, gluten can still be playing a role in causing our immune system to activate. Gluten also can be risky for those with autoimmune disease because of a phenomenon called molecular mimicry. And molecular mimicry occurs when your body is exposed to an invader. In this case, it would be gluten. And your immune system memorizes its structure so that it can develop a defense against it and recognize it in the future. And gluten is a particularly large protein, and it happens to be structurally similar to a number of our body's tissues, particularly the thyroid. So it's something to consider in that aspect as well. And to really know if gluten is something that affects you, the very best way is to eliminate it from your diet for a period of time. Usually, like with gluten, it sometimes has to be, 30 to 60 days. The washout period is a little bit longer than maybe other foods. And then perform a gluten challenge, bringing gluten back in to take note of symptoms, right? That really is kind of the best way to know if it really does affect you. And moving on to dairy. So dairy tends to be a little bit more individual in my experience, as some people can tolerate yogurt or butter, and maybe certain cheese, but don't feel as great when they have something like milk or ice cream. And there's a few reasons why dairy might not feel great in your body. And approximately 65% of the human population have a reduced ability to digest lactose, which is the sugar found in milk, after infancy. And dairy is often a culprit in GI symptoms related to leaky gut and can actually increase mucus production, which can irritate the gut lining and affect nutrient absorption. And additionally, commercially available dairy products have higher rates of hormones and toxins that really aren't great for your body, especially if you have an overloaded system, overloaded liver, difficulty detoxing in the first place. So if there is leaky gut, immune activation, and inflammation going on, it's best to remove certain known inflammatory foods like gluten or dairy and sugar for a period of time to cool things down, to kind of cool down the fires. So say, for example, you eat dairy in the presence of leaky gut and inflammation going on in your body. The inflammatory proteins from dairy can theoretically slip through the GI wall and trigger the immune system, especially since dairy can be cross-reactive with gluten for some people. So this is going to trigger the immune response. We talked about that immune system, 70% of it that is right around the lining of the gut. So this is going to trigger the immune response. And then also dairy can add potential xenoestrogens to an already overloaded hormonal system, which is going to further tax the liver, which is going to affect blood sugar, adrenals, and ultimately the full system. So you can see how it really affects the entire body, even if you don't have overt digestive issues. So when asking this question, does everyone with autoimmunity need to avoid gluten and dairy? And everyone is really different. I find it best to clear the muddy waters, like my mentor, Andrew Nakayama, said, and give your body a break from these potentially inflammatory foods for about 3 weeks. I always like to start for 3 weeks. I know with gluten, since I said it has a longer washout period, sometimes it can take a little bit longer to notice effects of not having it in your body. So that case could be anywhere from like 30 to 60 days. But I always like to just start something at the beginning and just say, okay, cool, I'm going to give myself 2-3 weeks, right? If it feels too daunting, just start and see how you feel. See what you notice as you're going and moving along. So from there, you're really able to see what other issues persist and move forward. When you take away some of these pieces that might be causing more inflammation, you're able to kind of then clear things away and see what else is left, see what else is there. And you may benefit from removing gluten and dairy for a period of time and then reintroducing them from a better baseline to fully understand how they're making you feel. And there are some practitioners that believe that gluten is a root cause of all chronic illness and that everyone should completely avoid it. And I'm not sure I have enough information to be able to like 100% concur with that. But I think what we do know about the gut and the immune system is that it's definitely something to consider if you have chronic autoimmune issues. So I know it's not a hard and fast answer, because that's the point, because it depends. It depends on what's going on for you. It depends on what's going on in your body, how you're breaking down food, what your personal history is. It totally depends. But I hope this helps to shed light on the process and bioindividuality, and considering whether or not you are going to fare well by including gluten or dairy in your diet. So let me know if you have any other questions in the comments. Thanks.